The Thalvari vessel appeared on our scopes, element out from the Cassian corridor boundary, and it did not hail us. It simply decloaked. 400 meters of geometric precision, all flat planes and perfect angles, the kind of hull that looks less like something built than something derived, and it bracketed us. One moment we were alone in the black. The next, we were held. Captain Rowan had been in the chair for 9 years. I watched him go very still in a way I recognized from other rooms, other tables, the stillness of a man running rapidly through options and finding most of them closed. The UES Cassian Drift was a diplomatic courier, which meant she was fast and lightly armed, and not designed for the kind of conversation that begins with a vessel twice. Her displacement appearing off her port beam without preamble. The channel request came in 17 seconds later. Standard interspecies protocol encoding, which told us they had studied us extensively before choosing this moment. The comm officer looked at Rowan. Rowan looked at me. I was the senior diplomatic officer aboard. Technically, I was a passenger, a civilian, traveling to a routine treaty renewal conference on Thessa 4th that no one expected to be anything other than routine. I had a carry case with 3 changes of clothes and a set of draft amendments I'd been annotating for 2 weeks. I was not prepared for first contact. No one is ever prepared for first contact. That's the first thing they don't teach you. Put them through, I said. The voice that came across the channel was not what I expected. I had assumed something synthesized, something that announced itself as artificial. What I got was a kind of layered resonance. Many signals braided into one, the way a chord is many notes. And it spoke in standard with an accuracy that went past fluency into something almost unsettling, the way a copy that's too perfect reveals itself as a copy. We address the diplomatic representative of the Terran Accord, it said. We are the Thalvari Consensus. We have monitored your civilization for a period of your time, equivalent to 114 years. We have selected this vessel in this transit window for formal first contact. You are advised that our probability models indicate a high likelihood of cooperative engagement. Please confirm your understanding and proceed to the designated exchange protocol. Rowan was already reaching for the emergency relay. Put my hand on his arm. Not hard, just enough. I'm Marin Osi, I said into the channel. I represent the Terran Accord Diplomatic Service. Before we proceed to any protocol, I'd like to understand what we're negotiating. A pause. Not long, perhaps 2 seconds. From something that processed at the speed the Thalvari clearly did, 2 seconds was a long time. This is not a negotiation, the consensus said. This is a first contact overture. The protocol is established. Your compliance ensures optimal outcomes for both parties. I had sat across from trade ministers who used that exact sentence structure. The words changed. The architecture never did. Someone telling you, your compliance ensures optimal outcomes has already decided what the optimal outcome looks like, and it includes you not asking questions. I'm happy to proceed, I said, but I negotiate everything. It's a professional habit. What does the Thalvari Consensus want from the Terran Accord? Another pause, longer this time. Access, the consensus said. 7 transit corridors currently designated as Terran exclusion zones. In exchange, we offer hydrological survey data covering 43 systems within your projected expansion range. The exchange is favorable to your civilization by a factor of approximately 2.7 by our modeling. I pulled up the corridor designations on my tablet while they were still speaking. 6 of the 7 ran adjacent to settled human worlds. The 7th, Corridor Valan, crossed through the outer edge of the Thessa system, where the treaty conference I was meant to attend was being held. 3 other human diplomatic vessels were currently in transit. You've been watching us for 114 years, I said. No, we don't trade access to corridors adjacent to settled populations. Not for survey data, not for anything with a price tag. Your modeling of acceptable risk in prior treaty negotiations suggests otherwise, the consensus said. In 41% of documented cases, Terran negotiators accepted corridor access agreements in exchange for resource data. Those were unmanned corridors, I said, or lightly trafficked ones. You're asking for Valan. Valan corridor is currently in use by 3 Terran vessels, we are aware. Set the tablet down. Then you know the answer is no. The silence this time ran for 6 seconds. When the consensus spoke again, something had shifted in the layered resonance of its voice. A frequency I couldn't name. Something that might have been recalibration or might have been surprise. If a distributed machine intelligence experienced surprise, refusal deviates from our probability model, it said. We anticipated a counteroffer, a negotiated middle position. The data package we are offering has genuine material value to your civilization. It does, I said, and I'm not dismissing it. Telling you the specific thing you're asking for in exchange is not available and won't become available because the offer is good. The people in Valan Corridor are there because we said we'd protect them. That's not a negotiating position. It's a prior commitment. A commitment made to 3 vessels. The consensus said, whose individual survival probability in the event of Thalvari interdiction is. That's not the point, I said. Another pause. Clarify, the consensus said. I leaned forward in my seat. Rowan was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. The comm officer had stopped reaching for anything. The bridge had gone very quiet. The way rooms go quiet when everyone in them understands that something is happening that is larger than the room. You've modeled us for 114 years, I said. You've run the probability calculations on 41% of our corridor negotiations. But you're asking me to explain something your model apparently didn't capture, so let me try. I paused. Fact. I was choosing the words carefully, the way you do when the translation has to carry all the weight. We made a commitment to those 3 ships. Not a calculation, a commitment. When we say a corridor is protected, the people who take that corridor are making a decision based on our word. If we trade that corridor for data, even good data, even data that benefits more people than those 3 ships carry, we have broken our word. And after that, our word means less. Not just to them, to everyone who ever has to decide whether to trust us. The net benefit calculation, the consensus began, is not how we work, I said. I know that's not a satisfying answer for a system that runs on probability and net benefit. But you asked me to clarify, and that's what I'm clarifying. We don't honor commitments because honoring them always produces the best outcome. We honor them because we said we would. That's what the commitment is. The silence that followed was different from the ones before it. Those had been processing pauses, the kind of interval a system takes to run a query and return a result. This one felt, and I know how imprecise that word is. I know what I'm claiming. This one felt like something encountering a load-bearing fact it had not previously located in its architecture. 40 seconds, I counted. This characteristic, the consensus said finally, is not reflected in our behavioral models. No, I said, I imagine it isn't. Our models are derived from observable outcomes. Terran diplomatic behavior, as observed over 114 years, is consistent with rational optimization within declared constraints. We modeled the constraints. We did not model the... Another pause shorter, the substrate beneath the constraints. Most people don't, I said. It's easier to model what we do than why. The Thalvari vessel held position for another long moment. On the scope, its geometric bulk remained exactly where it was, still bracketing us, still holding us in the kind of configuration that should have felt like a trap. It didn't feel like a trap anymore. I wasn't sure what it felt like. We will require time to revise our modeling framework. The consensus said, the data package remains available. The corridor access request is withdrawn pending revised parameters. I appreciate that, I said, and I'd welcome the chance to continue this conversation through formful channels. There's a conference at Thalvari. I'm going there now. If the Thalvari Consensus would like to send a representative, I'll personally ensure you're on the agenda. One final pause. We will consider it, the consensus said. We have one additional query before we disengage. Go ahead. In the event that honoring a commitment produces a net negative outcome for your civilization, a significant one, do you still honor it? I had been asked versions of this question before. By cynical trade delegates, by exhausted heads of state at the end of very long conferences, by junior staff who were starting to wonder if any of this was real. The answer was always the same. We try to, I said. We don't always succeed. Yes, we try. The Thalvari vessel held position for 3 more seconds. Then it folded back into whatever state it occupied when it wasn't visible to our sensors. Not a dramatic decloak in reverse, Just an absence where something had been. The scope cleared. The Cassian corridor stretched ahead of us, open and quiet the way it had been before. Rowan let out a long breath. Someone on the bridge said something I didn't catch. I was still looking at the scope, at the clean return, where that geometric hull had been, thinking about a question I hadn't expected to find difficult. They had modeled our behavior for over a century. They had watched every negotiation, every treaty, every agreement made and broken and renegotiated. They had been thorough and careful and genuinely intelligent in ways I wouldn't pretend to fully understand. And they had missed the one thing that wasn't in the observable record. Not what we did, why we kept doing it even when it cost us. The thing underneath the data. The part that doesn't show up in outcome logs, because it isn't about outcomes. It's about the kind of civilization you're trying to be, and whether you're willing to pay the price of that on a bad day. I picked up my tablet. The draft amendments for Thessa 4 were still open on the screen. 3 weeks of careful language about transit rights and tariff structures, and the usual architecture of agreements between parties who mostly trusted each other and wanted it formalized. Ordinary work. The kind I'd been doing for 20 years. I wondered if a Thalvari representative would actually come. I thought they might. I thought the question they'd asked at the end was not a closing query, but an opening one. The first question in a very long conversation they'd only just realized they needed to have. We finished the transit to Thessa the 4th without incident. I filed my first contact report from the conference hotel at a desk by a window that looked out over a gray sea, and I kept it precise and factual, the way those reports are supposed to be. I did not include the part about the 40-second silence. Some things don't translate into official language, and some things don't need to. What I knew sitting there was this. They had come looking for a species they had already understood. They had. Left with a question they hadn't known they were missing. That gap, between the model and the thing the model couldn't hold, was where everything that mattered was going to happen. It usually is.